in 2008, like so many of your listeners, the first recession just rocked my life to rock bottom. And when rock bottom hits, you don't have to hit with a thud. Oftentimes when you hit bottom, you bounce. And that's where I think the power is, that when the world feels upside down, you always have the power to make it right. When one chapter ends, you always have the power to write a new one. When, you feel like nobody loves you, you have the power to learn how to love yourself. And if there's one thing that COVID-19 has done, regardless of whatever devastation it has caused in your life, is it has forced us all to experience the great pause. And I read that in a Medium article, and I loved that idea of a pause, because I think in 2020, our lives have gotten so fast and so digital. And when you are forced to pause and get present and to slow down, you are reminded of what's actually important. And what's important is your health. What's important is your family and your friends. What's important is whether or not you are taking care of yourself and thinking positive thoughts versus negative thoughts. The world gave us a gigantic experiment where we got to practice and get to continue to practice the most important skill on the planet, which is emotional resilience, the ability to face hard and actually be okay, the ability to face the uncertain and redirect your attention on things that you know that are certain. And so I am so grateful that we had this time, because when I think about my family, so we've got a 21-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 15-year-old, we will never get these 10 weeks back again. It was a gift. As much as our two daughters who are in college were complete when they got home, it was a gift.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, for that generation, by the way, for them to learn, the generation where everybody gets a trophy, that the things that you love can be taken away like that. That there are things in life that are way more important than your prom or rush.
Or graduation.
Or graduation. Not to say that you don't deserve to mourn those things, but the perspective check that you got from COVID-19, and it really hit home because one of our daughters has a very close friend in college whose dad died, who's my age. And no prior conditions, nothing. And I think when change hits and it's personal, that's when the perspective shift comes. And so between COVID-19 and the fight for social justice that we're seeing with the Black Lives Matter movement and all of the protesting going on, it's been a really remarkable moment of time if you pause for a minute and you reflect on the opportunity of this moment.
What is the opportunity?
The opportunity is to unlock the power that's inside you to create a better future for yourself, for your family, for your body, for your mind, for your spirit, for this country, for this world, for your community.
Yeah. I always talk about, since I experience many breakdowns, whether it be a physical breakdown or relationship breakdown or family breakdowns, I feel like in order for us to really see clearly, we need to break down in a big way. It's hard to make big changes when things are good or when they're so-so. It's even when it's like, it's not good, it's hard to make changes. It needs to be devastatingly challenging for a lot of us. Some of us maybe can make changes all the time, but for most people, there needs to be some devastation or near devastation, either personally or close to you, to say, oh, let me reevaluate, let me pause, like you talked about, and start creating a better future for myself. Why do you think that is in human beings, that, if things are going bad, we won't change? If they're going good, we won't change, but it's almost like we need a massive breakdown, near-death experience, divorce, COVID, for us to see clearly to start changing?
Well, there's a really simple answer: patterns. So the thing about all human beings is that we are pattern learning machines. And if you feel stuck or broken, I guarantee you, while you feel that way, you're not. You have a pattern of behavior or a pattern of thinking that is broken. And we need to be disrupted because we love our patterns. And even people that I know, like
even when we're in pain, even when we're in pain, we love the pain.
Pain's familiar for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, like you may be listening to Lewis and I talking, and you grew up in a super chaotic household. Maybe your parents argued all the time. Maybe your dad or mom were in and out. Maybe there was a lot of fighting. Maybe there was actual abuse. I don't know what was going on, but it was chaotic as hell. And so as an adult, you have vowed to yourself, you are not going to repeat that pattern. But what ends up happening is because as a little kid, you absorbed the pattern of chaos in your nervous system, unless you go about the intentional work of breaking the pattern of chaos, you will create it in your own life because it's what's familiar. You won't understand. Why do I keep dating these assholes? Why do I go to these bosses that treat me like crap? Because you don't know what it feels like to be in a relationship with either a boss or a romantic partner or a roommate that is consistent, because for the first 18 years of your life, you lived in a state called, when's the next shoe going to drop?
Right.
And so wherever it is in your life that something is broken, there is a pattern that you don't see yet that is making you continue to stay in a broken situation. And so one of the things that you just asked, which is why is a perspective change or losing a job or something like that that's so disruptive? Because those sorts of things, COVID-19 breaks every pattern.
Yes.
Black Lives Matter.
Yep.
Yes. Black Lives Matter breaks patterns of thinking that you weren't even aware that you had about privilege or being anti-racist or what your Black colleagues and friends and relatives deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so having a breakdown is one of the biggest things on the planet, because what you get is you get a break from your own bullshit, and you can look objectively at where you are and for the first time look ahead and say, well, what do I want to go create? And 9 times out of 10, if you're discouraged right now, if you've got financial devastation, if you're facing something that is making this moment in time as hard for you as life was for Lewis and I in 2008 during the last recession, I beg you, ask yourself honestly if what you had is actually what you wanted. The thing that you just lost, that job that you bitched about all the time,
that relationship that was bad to you,
yes, or the friends you can't hang out with because it's convenient and you're in quarantine. Like, actually ask yourself if this is what you wanted, or were you just used to it? Being used to something, Lewis, I think is the biggest reason why people don't change. I asked my mother. I love my mother. I love my parents. I've been married 51 years, which is a feat because my mom was a teen mom. But I asked her once if she'd go to a personal development seminar with me.
What'd you say?
Are you kidding me? Why would I want to change at my age?
Oh, wow.
I might discover I hate my life.
Wow.
I was like, okay, I'm just going to leave that right there.
Right. I mean,
I think being used to what you have. I mean, I even our son is, so I'm here in Vermont at my mother-in-law's place, and our son is going to go to high school in Vermont. And so we're going to kind of split our time back and forth between my mother-in-law's place and our place in Boston, because God knows what business is going to be like. And, why would you need an office after COVID-19? Right. Another amazing thing to realize, even that change, I notice my own agitation, my own anxiety coming up. Will I make friends? Will I like a slower lifestyle? What happens if Chris likes it up here and I hate it up here? My own mind, because it's not something I'm used to yet, is making up stories to cling to the old way of life. This is a moment in time, everyone, please. This is the greatest gift. The greatest gift is this moment of pause where you get in touch with what you actually want. And if you don't have the skills, for crying out loud, look around and take an online course, because if you need skills to prepare yourself for the thing that you want, get them right now.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Awaken the prefrontal cortex. Get back in the game.
How has this rule helped you the most? In what area of your life? With your marriage, your business, in being more productive, in not having to, take drugs when you're worried so much?
Right.
Or or on stage, what's the area where you're like, wow, this has really had the biggest impact? And I'm sure all of it, but.
Well, the most important thing in my life is my marriage. So my relationship with Chris is like the thing that brings me the greatest joy. I mean, I'll just start crying thinking about it. Yeah. And how
many years have you been married?
20 years. We've been together for 22 years. Wow. 3 kids, 17, 16, 11. It has given me mastery over myself. Like, I get so choked up just thinking about this. Like, I used to feel out of control. And this rule allows me to be the best version of me and to interrupt, like, all the garbage that can trigger you to behave in a way that's inconsistent with your values and your dreams. And so that has been the single greatest gift.
That's great.
That, and also, I think the other thing that's super cool is that it is a tool that certainly prompts you to act, but it is also a tool that helps you tune in to your inner wisdom. Like, you're not only going to start waking up, you'll be so in tune with those signals that come from your instincts, not emotional, not instinctual, like instinctual, that that you get a direct line to your inner voice. You get a direct line. All those people. One of the things that's always struck me is, so if you list all the people that you admire, right? Yeah, Richard Branson, Oprah Winfrey, Bill Gates. Like, everybody's got
Mel
kind
Robbins.
of this. Yeah, well, whatever. Lewis, for sure. If you list all those people, Jay-Z, Beyonce, like everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody that you admire is doing the exact same thing. They actually listen to their inner wisdom. They have figured out how to tune out the critic up here and trust the instincts. And, I have this saying about confidence that I've only recently kind of stumbled into as I've been digging into more research around the science of confidence and the skill of confidence. Because a lot of people think that confidence is a personality trait. It's not. It's actually a skill that you build through action. And a lot of people think confidence is a state of belief. It can be, but that's not where it begins. And so I say that confidence is the willingness to try. That's all that it is. Knowing that you may succeed or survive, but you'll still try. And to me, all those people that we admire most, that's what they're doing. They have the ability to tune into those instincts that are true for them. Because the fact is, there's only one you. That's it. And you matter because there's only one you, and there's only ever going to be one you. And your instincts and your experiences and your inner wisdom is a gift to the world. And every time that you tune it out because of the habit of hesitating or the habit of self-doubt or the habit of worrying or the habit of overthinking, you are robbing the world of that gift that you have to give to everybody. And you can use this simple, stupid, silly tool to train yourself to not only hear it, but also to develop the skill of courage to act on it.
Powerful. And is there any area of your life where you feel like you lack courage still?
I'll admit it's kind of easy. I think we all kind of go through those moments where you feel like you're behind. And I think social media is both an incredible tool, and it can also be one of those triggers that makes you feel like, look at how many followers this guy has. And I'm like so tiny compared to this guy right here. Like, it's easy to use technology and social media not for inspiration, but actually as a way to bash yourself that you're not doing what other people are doing.
Comparison or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think that I use the rule a lot for patience. I notice that my insecurity rises up because right now, look, I did a ridiculous number of speeches last year. I travel way too much. I don't want my life to look like that. It's a champagne problem. I get it.
Yeah.
But I also have 3 kids and a marriage that I love, and I really feel depleted when I'm not with them. And so
I'm practicing patience as I make an intentional pivot in the kind of business that I'm running so that I have more of a life that I want as well. Yeah. So that's one area. I don't feel insecure as much as, you know the term deliberate practice, right? Mm-hmm. And you know the 5-hour rule where...
Deliberate practice, is that from the Talent Code?
Well, the deliberate practice is actually a psychological principle.
I think it was in a book called The Talent Code, but yeah.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Yeah. Well, it's a psychological principle that, and the 10,000 hour rule.
I mean, deliberate practice is in sports. Yeah,
so deliberate practice is this idea that, you could do 10,000 hours at anything and become an expert at it, but the way to do it faster is to do deliberate practice, which means you're practicing with the intention of improving, and there's a feedback loop.
Yeah. So you do 2,000 hours as opposed to 10,000.
Correct. Right. Like, for example, if you want to become an expert at guitar, learn scales. Don't just sit there for 10,000 hours and play the same song. Right. If you learn scales, you get the finger dexterity and the muscle memory and the neural pathway development. By the way. Yes, so I saw your guitar over there. So hard. I saw your guitar. I always wanted to play guitar, but instead I forced my 3 children to learn.
That's good. You just enjoy it. You just watch them. Exactly. My brother's, the #1 jazz violinist in the world.
What?
Yeah. And so I grew up watching the most incredible,
Now, is he built like you, too?
He used to be even, more jacked. They used to call him the Incredible Hulk of violin because he was just
wow, snap the thing in half?
He would. He would, slam it like Jimi Hendrix style, yeah. But now he's leaned up a bunch, actually, and so he's incredible. So I used to just be all awestruck by his gifts, and it was unbelievable, his skill. And so I learned guitar. I taught myself when I was 18 just because I was like, I have to know something, in terms of music. Cool. I can barely, I'm like a hack, but at least I can do something. Yeah. So yeah.
So I'm kind of in this mode of improving myself, and I'll give you one more thing that I'm working on. So I kind of think about my life and my work in 3 buckets. So we got this bucket here, we got this bucket, and we got this bucket. And so when you think about your business, or you think about your passion, or you think about work, I think about, okay, what do I need to do in terms of how much time and what actions do I need to take in order to develop the skills so that I can perform the work? Mm-hmm. So there's the deliberate practice that goes into practicing your skill and your
mastery.
Your competency mastery, so that when it comes time to actually deliver the work, whether that's selling or standing on a stage or writing a book or talking to people or selling real estate or whatever it is that may be your passion, deliver. This is the one I neglected last year. This bucket is, what are you doing to personally develop yourself so that you are the most capable, fulfilled, and satisfied human being, so that when you show up to do your competency and your skills and the delivery, that you as the human being are able to do that.
Yeah.
And so I've been spending a lot more time consuming content, reading books, watching, your incredible show, and learning from other people. And I think that one of the traps that we entrepreneurs get into is I was feeling last year anyway, like I was on a treadmill, and when I wasn't looking, somebody was coming by and turning up the speed.
Sure.
And I was only in this alley.
And increasing the hills, whatever.
Yes. And so, and if you're my age, you need like a diaper when somebody does that. You're on a treadmill and a leash to keep you attached to it. Exactly. So I've been focusing a lot on this, and it's been interesting because you and I were talking earlier too about you going to India and some of the stuff that you learned in terms of the different states to be in. And I use one where I pay attention to where I'm feeling depleted versus where I'm energized. And here's the thing. You can be doing things that are really hard that energize you. You can be doing things that are really scary that energize you. The same is true with things that deplete you. There are things in your life that are really easy for you. There are people that you hang out with, by the way, that you've been hanging out with for years, but they deplete you. And so I've been starting to become more deliberate about how I distance myself from things that deplete me, and how I spend more time and energy either doing or pushing myself to do those things that actually energize me. And this gets back to your message around passion, right? And that, the art and the skill of building a life that is guided by the things that you're passionate about.
Differently. I don't know that it matters, though. It's like, as long as you have the frame of reference that allows you to get to the other side, it's interesting. But for me, it's, I again, just like yours is based on your experience, mine's based on mine, I have found that the lessons do not come automatically, that if I don't pay attention and find the lesson and remind myself, because the way that I remind myself is no matter how badly I fail, that I can learn from this, and that if I learn enough, that knowledge will stack and I'll be able to succeed in a way. So my thing is, on a long enough timeline, I can be anyone at anything. Now, I don't believe that literally, but it's so close to true that I'm like, it will keep moving me forward. But I always have the fear that the things that are happening could very easily make things worse. And it's really interesting that as I get older, I think about this a lot. Like, part of my anxiety has always been around I've grown more anxious as I become more self-aware. And the reason that I become more anxious as I become more self-aware is I realize that there are real stakes. And I made a series of decisions, for instance, that grew my business and allowed me to sell it for $1 billion. Had I made the wrong decisions, that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
And I've been in legal battles. And if you make the wrong decision, it goes one way. If you make the right decision, it goes another. And so there are moments in life that really are ultra high stakes. Mm-hmm. And you have to pay attention and you have to get it right. And a certain level of anxiety is useful. But then there becomes a point where it's too much anxiety.
Right.
And now that becomes detrimental. And that becomes the very reason that you're making mistakes. So it's like this really fascinating, nuanced thing of recognizing the lesson will not take care of itself. I must get in there, get in the messy middle, figure it out. And I soothe myself by knowing that. There's a Jim Carrey quote that I'm paraphrasing, but he said, these people came to me one night at the comedy store. And they said, hey, Jim, there's a big casting agent. They're in the audience. This is your one chance. Do not blow it. And he went out and he blew it. And he came back and everyone's like, oh my God, like this was your one shot. And he was like, let me tell you this right now. Until you've blown your one shot 5 times, he's like, you haven't even started yet. And so I was like, wow, that's really powerful to remember that it's going to seem like you've only got this one shot, but really you've got a lot. But there are real consequences.
See, but here's the thing. There are real consequences, but see, I think you're always playing a high stakes game. You can't help yourself. It's in your DNA. And you're not somebody that's going to make a stupid decision.
I know I am.
No, you're not.
I'm not going to knowingly make a stupid decision. But I've made so many stupid decisions.
But were they?
So, yeah, 100%. So I'll give you an example.
Okay.
So NFTs.
Yes.
A roadmap was a mistake. And a roadmap led me to 120 hours a week for 8 months.
Okay.
To the point where people are like, there's no way you were working 120 hours. Oh, I can tell you. I can run the math. So it was 120 hours. It was so dumb. I was losing sleep. It was fucking nightmarish. And as I got into it, I realized what the mistake was, but I didn't know enough to avoid the mistake. Now, I'm very glad that I took action and I did it and I built it and it's all going to be fine in the end.
Right.
But it put me through 8 months of not fun. It was brutal and unenjoyable and taxing on my marriage.
Yeah.
So I would not repeat it. And if I wasn't able to say, that was a fucking mistake, don't do it again, I'm likely to repeat the mistake.
Okay, so here's the way I would frame that. That it had to be that painful because you were a stubborn motherfucker and you would have not gotten the lesson but for it being that painful. And I only say that because, I often wonder, why is this happening to me? Here's the things I can talk about. During the pandemic, between the talk show and the speaking business coming to a freeze and being responsible for payroll, being the victim of wire fraud, having a bunch of stuff go down with people that betrayed me and stole from me and lied to me and on and on and on. I'm like, I can't take one more fucking thing.
Yep.
But there was a singular lesson that I was too stubborn, too busy, too whatever, that I could then see backwards, oh shit, life's been trying to teach me this for a while. And what it was trying to teach me is, number one, you have to stop being everybody's friends and you've got to start thinking like a fucking CEO. You are not people's mother. You are a CEO now.
Technically you are.
Well,
3 people's mother.
3. But I was bringing that into business.
Yep.
2, because I'm not chasing celebrity or not, I don't view myself as this person with this like massive list of accomplishments. I just view myself as somebody who's sharing the stuff that I'm learning because I want to help you avoid the painful heartbreak mistakes that I made because I didn't know any better. That to me is what drives me. If I can help you accelerate your success or shrink the amount of pain that you feel, I have won the game of life for me personally, and I feel deeply fulfilled. But I was not being responsible about the platform that I had built. And I was not being responsible about getting systems and process in place. And the more successful I became, it was interesting. You and I, I started to have less and less and less to be able to complain about. And so it like got pointed right back at me. And the biggest wake-up call that I got when everything started to implode over the last 2 years was somebody said to me, Mel, the more successful you become, the more miserable you are. And
were they saying that about you specifically?
Yes.
Or they're just saying in general?
Yeah, about me specifically. It's like, I've known you for 8 years and you're just, like what you were talking about, Tom. You're stressed out. You work all the time. Whenever we check in, you tend to focus on the things that aren't working. And that tells me that nothing's working. And the reason why everything's breaking is because it's supposed to. And there are major mistakes that you're making about how you're approaching things, who you've surrounded yourself with, the way that you're showing up. And life is breaking things because you're not supposed to continue building on this messy foundation. And when I look backwards, Tom, just like you kind of look backwards, you can probably see, I wish I would have made it. I would have saved myself that heartache. I didn't know any better. And clearly, I am the kind of person that, whether it's because I move so fast or I'm distracted or whatever it may be, I need a sledgehammer to change directions. And I have now committed in this next phase of my life to change a lot of the patterns that weren't making me happy. And so when you and I saw each other today and you asked how I was doing, I mean it. Like, I am starting to have a breakthrough in happiness and being content. And I'm realizing, and this makes me very sad to say, I'm not sure I ever really knew what happiness feels like as a baseline. Like, I feel like I'm the kind of person that I've experienced a lot of joy. I've laughed a lot. I've had some fun. I've got tremendous amount of memories. I'm a good person. But in terms of having a sense of contentment and peace and being able to just be in the moment and enjoy where I am, I have never experienced that as sort of a way of being.
What was the breakthrough?
Well, I think it was probably 2 years of a lot of things breaking apart. It was the fact that during COVID, especially during quarantine, I couldn't go anywhere. And it made me confront the fact that I was regulating any uncomfortable feeling by being busy. And, there's some interesting things that I've been really unpacking about anxiety. And it relates to this. So I started to see that the way I had been doing things, not sustainable. I also, being home, I had this feeling of deep sadness because all of our kids were home. And I realized, oh my God, I missed out on our daughter's high school. And I'm about to miss out on Oakley's high school experience because I am so buried in work and I'm chasing the next speech or the next plan or writing this book that I'm not present in my life. And the other thing that started to happen is because I couldn't reach for the coping mechanism of running to Target or running to meet a friend or running to catch a plane, I was forced to sit with myself. And I started to realize that my experience in my body and in my mind is one where I feel like a race car that is sitting at a stoplight and the light turns at green and one foot's on the brake and the other one's revving the engine.
And that there is this experience that I have lived with forever of feeling just like the engine is revving and something's wrong. And I know it comes from childhood. I know that it comes from the fact that, I had a mom that had me when she was 19 and she dropped out of college. My parents are still together 54 years later.
Wow.
And she was a teen mom. She was halfway across the country from, the large family farm, and it must have been horrible. And she was alone. And my dad's starting medical school, and they were financially had nothing. And she was an unplanned pregnancy, and they got married like that summer after she dropped out of school. And I believe that my mom's stress at that time is something that I absorbed. And I'm not blaming it on her. I'm talking about the science here of how 0 to 5, particularly in those years where you're not verbal, you have experiences as a kid where you're not a match with your parents. And by not a match, I mean that what you need as a kid is not a match for the way in which your parent shows up. I am sure I am not a match for all 3 of my kids all the time. That maybe there's a moment where one of my kids really needs me to be soft and loving and kind and just hold them. And I'm talking and doing solutions. That means you're not a match. And what happens from 0 to 5 is that because your survival depends on attachment, when there's not that match emotionally, for whatever reason, your parents aren't present, they're dealing with their own shit, they never got it themselves, or a lot of times, there's just those of us that need a lot of love. And you have a parent that only has so much to give. There's this famous I think it was T.D. Jakes example, where he was talking to Oprah and he said, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but he was explaining to her, look, you're just like a 10-gallon person. You need 10 gallons of love. And maybe your mom had this much to give. And so there can be a mismatch because when a parent gives you everything they have to give, but it's only a drop in the bucket for what you actually need because you're a unique individual, you feel threatened. You feel unsafe. You feel separate. And so I've recently learned from Dr. Russell Kennedy, you should have him on, it's fascinating, that all anxiety starts from an experience of being separate from your parents as a child. And that when you're separate from your parents, there's an alarm that goes off. And that's what we call anxiety as adults. And so when you have an experience as an adult, a lot of us, and I for years, thought about anxiety as something that was like an alarm bell. Something's wrong, go fix it. That's where all the doing comes in. My busyness, Tom, was my attempt to outrun the alarm. My busyness, my overachieving, my drive, it was all like a coping mechanism for something going on in the background all the time. And anytime I would be in a situation where I felt separate, which was often, I've often had the experience of feeling like I'm on the outside looking in. That alarm is going off. And so I dive into work. A lot of people silence the alarm. My husband did this by smoking weed every day. Makes the alarm feel a little bit more quiet. People do it with drinking. They do it with porn, with all kinds of addictions. And so I developed this addiction to being busy and to constantly being in my head, worrying about things. It's its own form of addiction. And so during the pandemic, when things got really quiet and I couldn't reach for my normal coping mechanisms, I just started feeling like I was having a mental breakdown.
Whoa.
And I got very serious about really going inward and figuring out what is actually going on here.
You journaling, you meditating, what is going inward?
I'm a marriage therapist. I tracked down a therapist that works only with women around these sort of attachment issues. I did EMDR sessions, the eye movement stuff. Yep. My husband and I did several MDMA therapy sessions that were guided, that were just revolutionary, life-changing. And I started to experience something that I've talked about for years, but I have never been still enough to truly put into practice. And that is that most of us treat mental health issues by going from what I would say the neck up. I wish there was a different word than mental health. I really do, because mental health makes you think it's up here. Any issue that you have, Tom, that relates to the way that you think or physiological changes in your body or like on edge, anxiety, all that shit, it's all in your body. Your body has stored experience.
Your body and mind, or just
They're
your
all
body?
connected. But your body, so let's go neck down. Neck down is where the money is, people. Neck down is where the healing is. Neck down. You want to make more money, you want to be confident, you want to be more content, happy, all this stuff. Let's talk about the neck down. We spend a ton of time talking about really useful things in the toolkit, like meditating, like managing your thoughts, interrupting your thoughts, changing the channel, working on mindset. That gets you so far. And yes, those things have a benefit in terms of what happens in your body. Like we know, based on all the extraordinary research around meditating, what the physiological effect is, what the chemical effect is, the effect on stress. But I am a living example that if you start to attack any mental health issue or any mindset issue from the neck down, holy shit, Tom.
Talk to me about how you do that.
So, how you do it, first of all, is by understanding a simple fact. You feel before you think. And so, because all the experiences in your childhood are stored and remembered in your body, your nervous system, your gut, your heart, like all this stuff, it's all interconnected. I mean, when you and I were in utero, the same embryonic clump that forms the brain, as you know, you talk about it on the show, is connected to the gut. It's the same glob of stuff. I know this is not technical. I'm not a doctor. And
glob is pretty technical.
And then like when you pull it apart, like that stuff, that goop that kids play with, and that stringy shit connects it to, those are the neurotransmitters and the thing called the vagus nerve that literally act like a super highway from your gut to your brain. That your nervous system isn't, we think of the nervous system, and I don't know about you, but I think about like, the wires in your body and all that stuff. It's more than that. It's your gut, it's your heart, it's how everything's all connected. Yeah. It's all of it.
Stuff is hopelessly complicated. For people that don't know, the enteric nervous system, so from your esophagus to your anus, actually has as many neurons, literal brain neurons, as a cat brain. So when you think about having a personality, like think about how much a cat does and how specific they can be and how much personality they have and how one is different than another, it's really crazy. And then if you magnify that 1,000-fold by taking in all the bacteria and fungus and viruses and all that live in your microbiome, it gets crazy. When I heard that 70% of your serotonin is stored in the gut, that's when I was like, what is happening?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
it's true.
yeah, it's
a
crazy.
balanced gut is everything. And so and so when you start to understand, wait a minute, like there's all these physical sensations that we have that are stored experiences. And those physical sensations send an alert to your brain. And then your brain starts scanning and trying to interpret the signal that your body is sending it. So I'll give you a simple example. So I walked into a trunk show that a woman was hosting in this new community that we live in. And amazing group of women. Invited me to come over to look at this dress line that a woman had just launched. So supporting a female entrepreneur, meeting all these other cool women that have moved to this small town. And I walk in and I immediately feel the alarm go off. And it may surprise you because I seem to be a very outgoing person. But the truth is, I was kind of shy as a kid. And I'm not a big group person. I'm a really like one-on-one kind of person. Big parties are not my scene. I was never the big girl gang kind of person. And I love having lots of friends, but I'm way more comfortable in smaller settings. And so I feel this alarm go off. And I've just, been immersed for the last year and a half in my own healing. And so I go, oh, interesting. I wonder why this is going off. And I walk in, and I'm greeted by, a wonderful group of probably 9 women. And right after I hug everybody and I start to look around, I realize they all start talking again. And they all have kids the same age. They've known each other for a couple of years. And I have that immediate feeling of being separate. And I go, oh, that's what this is. That's exactly what Dr. Kennedy was talking about. This is an experience that is super subtle where this alarm goes off. Now, the old Mel would have been like, oh my God, I shouldn't have moved to this town. I'm never going to make friends with people. This is a horrible decision, aiming it right back at me. Immediately interpreting the alarm like something's wrong. Because from an evolutionary standpoint, when back in the day when there were saber-toothed tigers, the alarm going off inside your body meant there was something wrong. So now that I know that this is just a stored experience in moments where the little Mel felt alone, I now know that the fastest way to flip the switch is to like literally just put my hand right here and be like, you're okay. Like just give myself the reassurance that I didn't get in whatever moment my body's remembering from childhood. And literally the alarm disappears. And so when you start to become very self-aware about your body, and when you go on edge, or when you freeze, or when you feel that withdrawal, all you have to do is give yourself a little reassurance and love in that moment, because that's all that it is. Anxiety is from the little you. And it is waving a flag to say, hey, turn inward and give me a hug or do whatever. He's got this great exercise where you can take a towel and just go like this. And it's almost like giving yourself a hug. And I will tell you, Tom, absolute game changer. Because instead of doing what I have done for 52 years, which is I feel something's wrong and I go upstairs and then I try to manage the psycho thoughts that are going on, I just go right into my body and cut it off at the pass. And when your mind doesn't get involved and doesn't start interpreting all of the signaling in your body, it passes within what's the research says like 90 seconds, but when you get really good at it, it passes like that. So things like cold exposure. So we have an ice barrel and we've got this other cold plunge thing that Joel Marin just sent to me as a gift, our buddy. I do that like several times a week. The other thing that I do is I always exercise every day, whether it's taking the dog for a walk. I get outside first thing in the morning. I do all kinds of breathing techniques, whether it's like I just learned a new one where you take in 2 nose breaths and then it seems dumb and you look really stupid doing it.
Breathing stuff's so
effective.
Dude,
it is like the exhale is the important part. Because when you breathe in through your nose like that, it shuts off your brain thinking. You cannot do that and think about something. Like try to do a math problem while you're going, you can't do it. And then blow out through your teeth closed. And the longer the exhale, the better, because it's on the exhale that you are learning and signaling to your body that you're in control in this moment.
All right, page 49. And this is going to address what I'm talking about. Why it's so important to catch when your thinking drags you down. Why it's so important to put a stop on how long you're going to wallow in your misery and feel sorry for yourself, and how to flip yourself back into a high five attitude. All right, page 49. We're right here, everybody, where it says your subconscious won't say I love you. You want to see your negative thought patterns in action? This is the patterns that are stored in your self-conscious, because what we've been discussing, everybody, is how you have a habit of rejecting yourself. You have a habit of criticizing yourself. You have a habit of being hard on yourself. And we are breaking that habit and replacing it with a new habit called the high five habit. So if you want to see your self-rejection in action, just look at yourself in a mirror or pay attention to what you do when somebody tries to take your picture. Now, my kids used to tease me because every time I looked in the mirror, they said I made a very weird mirror face. And I didn't even know I was doing it. And here's the thing, everybody, including you, has a mirror face. What is a mirror face? Well, that's when you look in the mirror and then subconsciously within a nanosecond, you literally fix your face in order to appear more attractive. Why do we do this? I'll tell you why we do it. Because we don't like what we look like. It's a form of rejecting yourself. And if you don't realize you do it, just watch your teenagers or any teenagers in your life. They all have a mirror face. It's what they call their good side. You know how when you try to take a family photo and your kids now move you around like a prop in a photo, and this one wants to be on this side with the elbow out, and that one's got to do this and kind of lean their face like that? That's what I'm talking about right here. subconscious. We all do it. Or if you're somebody that really hates what you look like, I bet you hide in the back of the photo. You make somebody block your body. This is another subconscious form of self-rejection. My mirror face involves an ever so slight puckering of the lips, and I suck in my cheeks. I kind of do this thing where I'm like I kind of like elongate my chin, which I don't know why I elongate my chin, because I really don't care for how pointy my chin is. But like I kind of, you see how I go sucking in right there? I didn't even realize I was doing it. And then my kids, literally, this is so mean. They would start to mercilessly, I can't even pronounce the word, it's so mean. They would relentlessly tease me. If there was a photo where I had the, kind of thing right there, my kids would be like, oh, mirror face. If we walked past a mirror and I looked at myself, I go, and I didn't even realize, mirror face, Mom. And then I'd be like, what am I doing? I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't know that I'm doing it. I'm sorry. Now, I'm proud to say that I have actually not done the mirror face in months. In fact, it kind of was hard for me to do that. I had to like pull it in a little bit. It's sort of like I've gotten Botox right here probably for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. When they go squint like this, I don't even know how to do it anymore, because by getting Botox, it's relaxed these little muscles here, and I don't even know how to scrunch them anymore. But my mirror face is the same thing. The high five habit has made me change the programming in my mind. You see, when I look in the mirror now, you guys, I actually don't see what I don't like. I don't see the stuff I need to fix. I see a human being that I care about. How cool is that? I don't see a face that needs, I can't even do it. I don't even know what, I don't even know what I was doing as a mirror face. There is so much compassion, acceptance, and understanding with practicing the high five habit. It literally rewires your mind and your habits. I see not my appearance, I see me, Mel Robbins, the person, the human being. And that's what's going to happen for you. How many of you know what I'm talking about because you've been practicing the high five habit? That you are literally experiencing a complete rewiring of your mind. You're experiencing a completely transformed relationship with yourself, that it used to suck to look in the mirror. And now you have this completely different relationship standing in front of the mirror with the human being you see standing there looking back at you. Well, here's what science tells us about mirror face, everybody. We all have automatic thoughts, things we think so often that they become the default, like a rut in a path. If you deliberately change your actions or thoughts, you change your default way of thinking and acting. Now, this deliberate change is called a neuroplastic response. And right now, your default thinking and mirror face are making you hyper focus on what's wrong with you or what you think is wrong with you. And here's the good news, you can change it. I want to give you a couple other examples, because when we were researching what's called a neuroplastic response, one of the gals that I work with, Tracy, found this really incredible research. And for whatever reason, I was like, nah, we don't need to put it in the book, but I feel like I want to tell it to you right now so that you understand that neuroplastic responses to your appearance, to your body, they are hardwired in your mind. So for example, if you're somebody that's really struggled with weight, okay, and whether it's because you have put on a lot of weight or because you are just larger in your build, and you have these habits that you've adopted of whether it's, I always like to be in the back of the photo because I don't want people to see my body. That's a neuroplastic response. Another thing is if you're a larger build and you have to kind of turn to get through some doorways, what they've found based on research is the neuroplastic response of turning sideways or trying to kind of scoop your stomach so you can slide into a chair or a bench as you sit into a table. Even after you lose weight, what researchers have found is that behavior in relation to your body and how you perceive yourself is still there. So even after folks, go through these massive transformations and start to lose weight, they'll still turn sideways when they go through a doorway because of the neuroplastic response. We also see this with very tall people. So my brother, for example, is 6'5", and he's a super tall guy. And there are lots of doorways that he's got to kind of duck to get under. Well, what's interesting is even in doorways that are large, you can still see him do this because of his height, even though he doesn't have to. That's a neuroplastic response. Are you guys starting to get this? This idea that there are ways in which you have responded to your height, to your weight, to your appearance, to your identity that have become hardwired in your brain. And what we want to attack is we want to attack the neuroplastic response that you have to yourself that's negative. That neuroplastic response that is like, I'm a bad person. Or my daughter yesterday, nothing ever works out for me. This is going to be nothing works out for me. And I'm sitting there thinking, wait a minute, there's a lot that works out for you? I don't know what you're talking about. But her neuroplastic response is nothing works out for me. And it's simply in there because she's repeated the thought so many times. I used to have the exact same thought, by the way. The high five habit has erased it. It gets triggered by certain situations, but it's not the default anymore. Isn't this exciting, everybody? That you can identify what your neuroplastic response is related to your identity or how you think about yourself or how life is going. And we can break that neuroplastic response apart so that the response that you have to your face, to your body, to your identity actually matches what you want to feel instead of the patterns that you're just used to thinking and feeling. I freaking love this. Don't you love this? If you think your life is a mess, wait until you hear what a train wreck I used to be. That's right. Today, we are going to go all the way back a couple decades to 20-something-year-old Mel Robbins when I was a complete freaking train wreck. So for all of my 20-year-olds in their 20s trying to figure out life, you think you're a train wreck, you think you're a mess, you're waking up hungover on the weekends with lots of regret about who you hooked up with. I got you covered. I got you beat. Wait till you hear what my life was like when I was in my early 20s in law school. For those of you in your 30s where you're like, I'm never going to be happy. I don't know what to do with my life. You in your 40s, you're not happy. There must be more to this. If you're going through a divorce, if you're dealing with addiction, no matter what you're dealing with, that makes you think your life is a mess, that makes you believe that you're a train wreck. Trust me when I tell you, the law school 20-something version of Mel Robbins is a human being that was so out of control, you will not even recognize the person I'm about to describe. Hell, I might have a panic attack or a PTSD flashback as I am reading to you from the high five habit. So here we go. That's what story time's about today. And I'm also going to tell you how I started to turn it around. For those of you that want to follow along with your New York Times bestseller, The High Five Habit, we're going to start on page 67 today. Here we go. This is a chapter called, Am I Broken? One of the worst periods of my life was during law school. So this would have been 1991. Little Mel Robbins was 23 years old. One of the worst periods of my life was during law school, which is where my anxiety that had building since childhood culminated in a wildly self-destructive streak. For 3 years straight, I woke up in a panic because once I got to law school, I knew I didn't want to be a lawyer. But since I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life, I had no idea what else to do but to keep going to law school. I was constantly on edge. I was stressed out, falling behind. And you know what? My thoughts, my actions, my habits, they just made those feelings of being behind worse. Plus, I was surrounded by all of these people who were excited to be in law school. And that just made me feel like I didn't belong in law school. So I felt so alone. And on top of this, if this isn't bad enough, knowing that you're in a place that you don't belong, in a place that you can't stand, how many of you can relate to this because of what your life is like right now? The job that you have, the school that you're going to, the friends that you hang out, you just feel like you don't belong. You kind of have the sense that you're not supposed to be in this career or in this relationship or in this friend group or whatever it may be, or stuck in these habits, but you don't know what else to do, so you just keep going. This was my life. I get it. You know, in law school, I hated all the reading and writing that are requirements for being a lawyer. And plus, I didn't know a lot about myself. I didn't even know at the age of 23 that I had dyslexia or ADHD. I just thought, I'm a fucking train wreck here and I am lost and I don't know what to do. So let me tell you about my daily routine. Wake up hungover, think, oh my God, I'm late again. Why do I keep doing this? Stare at the ceiling, thinking about my classes for the day and how behind I am on my homework. Then I would light a cigarette. I would race around the apartment. Then I would drive to Dunkin' Donuts. I would order the biggest cup of coffee with cream and 3 sugars. Then I would head to class. And as I was sitting in class, I would panic about being called on. Then I'd pick at a salad for lunch. I'd sit alone in the library. I'd try to study. I would literally procrastinate for hours talking to friends. Then I'd drive home. I'd have an anxiety attack because I hadn't done anything all day. Then I'd split a bottle of wine with my roommate. I would fall asleep drunk in my bed. And I would wake up hungover, and this routine would repeat. Now, this was the perfect routine, not for excelling at life or getting clear. This was the perfect routine, everybody, for creating a big, fat, terrifying life for myself. And guess what? It didn't stop there. You see, once you're kind of in a self-destructive routine, it typically gets worse before it gets better. Now, I repeated this routine every single day for 3 years. And, you know, as I sit here and read this, I can kind of try to be kind of funny and laugh it off. But here's the truth, you guys. Like, my armpits are sweating right now. I have like tension in my stomach. I feel my heart constricting. I'm starting to feel the anxiety of what 23-year-old law school student stuck, freaked out Mel Robbins, self-destructive Mel Robbins felt like. I spent the entire 3 years of law school anxious, disassociated, disconnected, in denial. You know, and I don't actually remember a lot of it because of how on edge I was. Now, if you look at my patterns of thought and behavior during that period, if you look at the choices I was making every single day, here's a truth that I believe. Your behavior doesn't lie. Your feelings can lie, but your behavior never lies. If you look at your behavior objectively, you will be able to predict where you're going to be a year from now. I could see that my behavior had me locked in a painful and broken cycle. The negative thoughts, which were basically like, you're a train wreck, you screwed up again, you're never going to amount to anything, you're never going to figure this out. They were such a barrage that I couldn't focus on anything. I mean, forget about reading law school books. All I could focus on was surviving the day. And here's the thing. When you start surviving, it's like treading water. It's not like you're going to win a swim race because you have a beautiful stroke and you can gain control. You are literally just trying to keep your head above water. That's what my life was like. That's what 23-year-old Mel felt like. Just survive the damn day. And the more that I stayed in that cycle, and the more that I repeated that cycle of wake up late, wake up hungover, reach for the cigarette, don't eat anything, drive and get a cup of coffee, sit and freak out, procrastinate, the more on edge I felt. Because behavior doesn't lie. Negative thoughts, by the way, and these negative behaviors, they fry your nervous system. and they create a downward spiral. And it can get so bad. This is what happened to me. Like, you have no idea how to escape that centrifugal force of things spiraling negative out of control. And, you know, here's the thing that I've learned. When you feel like a train wreck, and when you keep repeating destructive patterns day in and day out because you don't know how to break them, it gets worse before it gets better. Anybody of you got some life experience with this? Any of you could feel yourself spiraling toward rock bottom? You knew it was coming and all you could do was brace? Well, that was me. And, you know, if you think I botched up my first year of law school, just fasten your seatbelt, because boy, I was just getting started. Did I really screw up things second and third year? Wait till you hear about my first summer in law school. This is a story most people don't know about me. That first summer of law school, I interned at the Attorney General's office in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Now, the Attorney General asked me to do a research project on recidivism rates in Michigan. Now, this was an incredible opportunity for a law school student. I am basically working for the highest ranking lawyer in an entire state, the Attorney General. And the Attorney General has asked me to do a research project. And the research project would have not only allowed me to learn a lot about a topic I cared about, but it would have also been an incredible building block for my resume. Working directly for the #1 attorney for the state of Michigan? Holy shit. But check this out. I was such a train wreck, I didn't know how to pull it together. I was 23-year-old Mel Robbins. I was so overwhelmed by a project that size, I didn't even start it. I didn't even start it. Can you imagine going into your summer job every single day and pretending that you're working on something for the head person and you haven't even started it and you're not even working on it? I mean, can you imagine the stress? Holy shit. I didn't even crack one book open to work on it. Not one. Here we go again, everybody. My anxiety, and I bet you, how many of you feel on edge just hearing this story? Just hearing this story. My anxiety was so constant, I don't even remember driving back and forth to the Attorney General's office, which was a 50-minute drive from North Muskegon, Michigan, all the way to Grand Rapids, Michigan. Each way, I don't remember driving back and forth 5 days a week that summer. You see, that's what happens when you're so on edge and so out of control. Your nervous system is so on edge, your brain is not even present. It's not functioning properly. Now, here's something I do remember. I remember the Attorney General calling me into his office near the end of the summer. So we're talking August of 1992. I'm 23 years old, standing there in my little suit. My face was bright red. I was sweating through my suit jacket, and he was asking me about the progress on the project. I made up a bazillion excuses for why I didn't have anything to show him, and the reason. I just lied. I stood there and literally, I might as well have been tap dancing with a freaking tea kettle on my head, because I was just freestyling all kinds of excuses and reasons and this and that, delay, stall, like look over here, distract. And then I walked out the door of his office and I never went back. I never went back. I walked out the door and never went back. I didn't even quit, you guys. I just disappeared. You know, I was apparently ghosting people 3 decades ago before it was something that we were all talking about now. You know, it's honestly so embarrassing. That's why I don't ever really talk about this story until now. Now it's in print in my New York Times bestselling book, The High Five Habit. Now, another year I landed, so the next year I landed an amazing summer job at a law firm in New Mexico. And a week before I was supposed to get on a plane in Boston, Massachusetts, where I was going to law school, and fly across country to New Mexico, where I'd landed yet another job. I mean, we all know they never called the AG for a reference, right? I had a massive panic attack. Literally, a massive panic attack over the thought of getting on a plane by myself, something I had hated to do, to fly across country and live by myself for the summer in a place I had never been, all of the unknown, all of the uncertainty, all of it. Plus, I hated law school. I hated being studying the law. I didn't want to do it. And you know what I did? I called the law firm in New Mexico and I lied. I said there had been a family emergency and I couldn't come for the summer. A lie. And does this sound like the Mel Robbins that you know? You know, as you listen to this story and you think about what a train wreck I used to be when I was in law school in my 20s, you know, it's easy to kind of see how it kind of starts with a fear. I can't handle this. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm stuck. I got no choice. I can't do this. And that thought of I can't, or I'm not capable, or I'm not worthy, then triggers all of this negative energy and all of these negative feelings in your body. And then all of a sudden, when you have negative thoughts like, I can't do this, and negative feelings like, oh my God, I hate feeling like this. I don't want to feel like this. I feel on edge. All of that then triggers a knee-jerk negative response. And my knee-jerk negative response to cope with anxiety in situations I couldn't control everybody was to run away from them or to lie. That's what I did at the Attorney General's office. I ran away from the project. I lied about what I was doing, and then I ran away from the job. I did that with this job across country that I didn't think I could handle. I ran away from it, and then I lied. And this was a pattern that I repeated that started to become my reaction to every single situation of uncertainty. This is how patterns happen, everybody. You get triggered by something, you respond, and all of a sudden, the response works. It worked to lie because I got out of it. It worked to run away because I didn't have to face the shit that scared me. But the problem is you're left with a pattern that blows of lying, of running away, of being paralyzed by uncertainty. Does this sound like me? Of course not. And see, the problem with these kind of patterns is that, you know, once you start spiraling, it's going to take some kind of force to break the spin that you're in. And I want to emphasize while we're talking today about, you know, you think you're a mess? Meet law school 23-year-old Mel Robbins. She was a train wreck. I want to emphasize the fact that your negative thoughts and the negative feelings that you feel in your body, this is where we got to go to work, everybody. Because negative thoughts are going to rise up and you're going to have negative feelings, feelings of uncertainty, feelings of panic, feelings of overwhelm, feelings of not being good enough, feelings of stress, feelings of abandonment. All of that's going to rise up and you can't control the fact that it rises up, but you can notice it and you can intervene. And this is what the adult Mel Robbins knows. This is what I'm going to be teaching you. This is what the High Five Habit is all about, breaking these patterns that are bringing you down. Because, you know, when you're really used to feeling on edge and when you're used to being beaten down and when you're used to constantly worrying and when you're used to defaulting to negative thinking, you may not even realize that this is the default way that you go through life. I mean, I certainly didn't. And you also don't realize how these thoughts and these feelings, when you keep listening to it and you keep responding to it on automatic, how it's creating a life that you don't want. Now, of course, here's the thing. Of course, I wanted to be successful. Of course, I wanted to be strong. Of course, I wanted to do a great job on that research project for the AG. Of course, I wanted to get on a plane and fly across country and have an adventure living in a part of the country that I love New Mexico? Hello. How beautiful is that? How cool would have that been? But my mind was so attached and invested and used to, I can't handle this. I mess everything up. Nothing works out for me. I'm a fuck up. I'm a mess. That I could not figure out how to look at a project that I'd never done that felt overwhelming and encourage myself to do it. I couldn't look at the summer job in New Mexico because my default way of thinking is, you can't fucking handle this. You're a fucking screw up. Like, you're basically failing through law school or coasting or lying. Nobody's figured it out yet. But dude, like, you can't do that. That as soon as something felt overwhelming, I immediately ran away. I immediately shot it down. I immediately started lying to myself, because it is a lie. Me telling myself, you mess it up, you can't handle it, that's a lie, Mel Robbins. And so, naturally, once I bailed on these two opportunities, it only made me feel worse about myself. And that just deepens the spiral. More negative thoughts, more shame, which just takes your spirit right down with it. And this is so important. I got to repeat it, everybody. When your negative thoughts increase, you're going to get trapped in the spin cycle of catastrophic thinking. And that's basically law school. My entire 3 years of law school was me trapped in a habit, a loop, a pattern of catastrophic thinking. I piled on so much negativity. You can't do this. You're going to fail. You're in the wrong place. You're stuck. You screwed up again. Holy cow. Everyone's going to find out. That I basically suffocated underneath these things until I hit rock bottom. It's almost like there was a giant sledgehammer that smashed my life into pieces, but I was the one who was wielding the sledgehammer. And no matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried, I could not seem to fix the fact that I was literally lying, running away, faking it, on edge, and doing nothing but engaging in self-destructive behavior and habits all day long. Holy shit. Now, I had none of the tools that I talk about in this book and I talk about online all the time. I didn't know the link between my childhood trauma and my self-destructive behavior. I didn't know how to stop believing that the bad things prove that I was a bad person. I was so ashamed of what I kept thinking and doing, and yet I just kept doing the things I was ashamed of. And so I did what most human beings do when they find themselves in a shame spiral and they find themselves feeling all kinds of negative things. I just tried to numb what I was feeling. And there's a million ways you can numb yourself. You can bury your pain with alcohol, with drugs, with impulsive shopping, with porn, with emotional eating. Are you counting? Because I did a lot of those things and I did something else. And so the story's about to get even worse, you guys. I started cheating on my law school boyfriend with an ex from college because psychologists will tell you sex in secrecy, it is an intoxicating stress reliever. And there is no bigger rush of dopamine than having an orgasm with somebody that you're cheating with, except for having an orgasm with somebody that you're deeply in love with and committed to. But that said, I will tell you that all of this shit that I was doing is also a powder keg of destruction that will implode your life. And that's exactly what happened to me. Because eventually both my law school boyfriend and my ex from college found out what I was doing. And look, the irony's not lost on me because my immediate reaction is, for fuck's sake, you can't even cheat correctly? You fail at this too, Mel? And, how screwed up is it that my default is not, I got to fix this, but wow, you're even screwing up the screwing up. That's how screwed up you are. That's some grade A dysfunction, Mel Robbins. And, I know I'm being kind of flamboyant as I read this to you. I am not proud to admit the things that I did. while I was trying to survive a life that felt like it was completely out of control. I'm telling you this story to prove to you that if you're trapped right now, if your life is a mess, if you're a train wreck, if you keep engaging in self-destructive patterns of behavior, there's a way out. I mean, look at me. I'm an example. There is a way out. That used to be me, and I don't even recognize that person anymore. If I can change, you can change. And, look, this is not my comeback story at this point in law school. But luckily, my big crash and burn, both of these guys finding out about each other and confronting me about it, led me to the place where my lifelong journey with personal growth began. The therapist couch. It was there as a 25-year-old that I began to understand that I was doing this to myself. Not intentionally, of course, just like you're not intentionally doing the shit that's self-destructive to yourself. But that for me, I had childhood trauma and patterns of thinking, belief, and behavior that had become patterns, habits, loops that were the default, that were stored in the subconscious parts of my mind. They just ran on autopilot. And they kept taking me down these crazy self-destructive paths when life got scary or uncertain or I was triggered. Now, with the guidance of my therapist at the age of 25, I was finally able to face what had happened to me and all the horrible things that I'd done to survive. She also helped me see that I had to take responsibility for all the fucking shit I did in my life from here on out. Like, once you kind of have this awakening, you got to draw a line in the sand and be like, I'm not responsible for the things that were done to me that caused the trauma or that have created these patterns of survival and coping. But now that I realize that I can heal and I have a choice and I want to change these patterns, there's a fucking line in the sand. And I am taking responsibility for what happens next. Period. Full stop. I'm taking control of my life. And, I had to face a lot of stuff that was really uncomfortable. I was honest about the things that I did that led me way down the road of self-destruction and led me really far from who I knew I really was. And, that's the interesting thing about being messed up or a train wreck or really stuck or super self-destructive. Intrinsically in your heart and soul, this is not who you are. But you feel this despair because you're not sure how to get back to yourself, how to find the door and how to grab the handle and how to open it. So, I literally, and here's one other thing I want to say. You're really lucky. When I was 20, 22, 23, 25, and don't make yourself wrong, if you're older than that and you're watching this, I had no idea what habits were or, what personal development meant or what self-awareness was. I mean, going into a therapist, you basically pulled your hood up over your head and hid your identity. I mean, who went to a therapist 3 decades? There's something really wrong with you. Holy shit. This was before podcasts, online courses, self-help books. You didn't even go into the self-help section in a bookstore. And so honestly, this is actually why I'm so passionate about sharing everything I learned and sharing my stories and sharing research that I find helpful, because I didn't have access to that shit, guys, when I was in trouble. And thank God I had such a colossal breakdown. I ended up in a therapist chair at the age of 25, which was 38. How many years ago? 30 years ago. Jesus, I'm old. Okay. But this is your comeback story. Here's the profound insight that I gained during this period of my life. And I also want to say something else. My journey to heal did not end with that therapist. I have worked on myself for the last 30 years. And I will always work on myself because it's a form of growth. And even in just the last year alone, I have had extraordinary new experiences with plant-based medicine, with guided MDMA therapy, with ketamine therapy that has worked wonders on my nervous system. And I can't wait to tell you all about it and share resources with you. And so I'm constantly growing and learning. But that breakdown in my life at the age of 25, after a miserable, horrible train wreck of 3 years as a law school student, so fucking unhappy, so broken, so beaten down, so lost, that was the beginning of that line in the sand and saying, I am going to take responsibility for who I become and what happens next. And here's one of the profound insights that I've gained, everybody. You ready? When you think you've messed up, you start to hate yourself. And when you hate yourself, you inevitably do things you hate. And so that thought that I've messed up and that thought I hate myself, it begins a downward spiral. Because when you hate yourself, you do things you hate. But here's the cool thing. The opposite is also true. When you love yourself, you inevitably do things you love. When you treat yourself with respect, you do respectable things. And when you celebrate yourself, you do more things worth celebrating. And as I talk about extensively in this book, The High Five Habit, you can change whenever you decide you want to change. You could do it right now because you have the ability to identify your past experiences and the past programming that you no longer want to hear or be controlled by. And when you identify these patterns of thinking and behavior that no longer serve you and that make you feel things you don't want to feel, when you identify the pattern, you can work to break them apart and to replace them with a new pattern. And your brain loves patterns. Interrupting all of those self-loathing feelings that you have, all of those self-loathing thoughts that you have, all of those like just body sensations that take you to a low place of shame and regret and failure and feeling like you're not worth anything. I have been there. I have lived there. When you interrupt those feelings and those body sensations and those thoughts, what's going to happen is by interrupting those thoughts, it'll force you to see the truth. And the truth is, you're not broken. You're just blocked. You may have done some things that are pretty bad. I know I have. But you're not a bad person, and neither am I. And even in the periods of my life when I was acting like a train wreck, the truth is, I just felt wrecked internally because of the trauma and because of the programming that was in my mind, body, and spirit from surviving situations in my childhood. You didn't know how to act differently when you were little. And I didn't know how to act differently when I was in law school because you didn't understand what a critical role your constant negative thoughts, your past trauma, and your upbringing have on you and how you think and what you feel and what your triggers and patterns are right now. And you know what? I didn't understand what a critical role my negative thoughts, my past trauma, and my upbringing and past experiences had on me, and how it led me to all those self-sabotaging behaviors that made me feel like a train wreck. So what's the path forward? Well, step one, forgive yourself. Right now, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for all the things that you did while you were just trying to survive. I forgive myself for ghosting the Attorney General of Michigan. I forgive myself for calling that law firm in New Mexico and lying. I forgive myself for not being strong enough to seize the opportunities that life was presenting. I forgive myself for cheating on people that I deeply cared about. I forgive myself for struggling with anxiety and childhood trauma for decades, too long, because I didn't know any better. When you can forgive yourself and accept what has happened and understand that if you had known better, you would have done better, but you did the best that you could with the programming that you had. You were just trying to survive. If you can forgive yourself, now you're ready for the next step. And that is to go to work to silence and then evict that fucking bully that lives in your head. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.